Hi, I'm Dennis Gage. Thanks for tuning in to My Classic Car, home with a certified car nut. Back in the mid-60s, a handful of performance gurus were teaming up with OE manufacturers and dealers to produce supercars that came with factory warranties. Now, everybody's heard of Carroll Shelby and his Mustangs and Don Yanko and his Camaros, but there was another matchup on Long Island, New York between Baldwin Chevrolet and Joel Rosen's Motion Performance that produced some of the most radical and arguably the most powerful of these showroom racers. Well, I'm just outside Indianapolis, Indiana with Dan McMichael. Dan, how you doing?
I'm well, how are you?
Man, I'm real well. I'm in a sea of Motion Performance here. Dan, these are incredible. You know, you've got quite a collection of vets here. What am I looking at here?
Well, first of all, this is a Motion GT Corvette, and the GT Corvette is probably the cream of the crop as far as what Joel did. They only did 10 of those because of their price tag, which
was how
ran
much?
Somewhere close to $13,000 completely
Ooh,
off
in 1970 or so?
1969 and 1970.
That was a lot of money.
He originally thought that this would be the line that took him and really sold extremely well, but as it turned out, because of the price tag, a lot of people just couldn't afford to buy them. And so it ended up being a car that was only produced, I believe, only 10 total GTs were done.
Well, now, of course, you know, Baldwin Motion cars and all those were, you know, they're known, they're supercars, they were street cars, but that wasn't really his goal in building this car, was it?
On this particular car, his goal was luxury, without a doubt. You start off with an LS6 big block that has 535 horsepower.
Well, that's really respectable. And pretty much the full motion treatment on it, right? I mean, everything you could do to it almost.
Everything you could possibly imagine was done to this car, from camming to intake to ignition. The neat part is that this car is optioned with a Turbo 400 that came with an extra gear, and you'll see a Hone overdrive lever on the right side of the console in here. And with one flip of a lever, this car gained an extra gear and also reduced the differential gearing from 488 to 342. So basically you went from a radical strip car to a highway cruiser with one flip of a lever.
Man, basically a two-speed rear end, right?
That's correct.
Well, and he really wanted this GT, you know, this touring, European touring car feel. I mean, you got the Le Mans filler, and a wild rear window too.
Yeah, this is a fastback rear window that Joel put in the cars. His claim was that he wanted to have room for luggage, but in reality what he was trying to do is create room for a couple of Newfoundland dogs that he had so they could ride them around town.
Luggage, dogs, whatever. But it had the, you know, it pretty much had the trademark side pipes that I think
the hooker side pipes and the paint, the Motion paint scheme with the arrowed sides, and then he always liked to put a center stripe down a lot of his Corvettes for distinctive striping, and those are trademarked.
Those lens covers are really wild, but as wild as this is, it isn't even close to as wild as the Spider here. What's the deal on the Spider? Welcome back to My Classic Car. Dan McMichael's Baldwin Motion supercars were so unique. Dan gave you the scoop on this extra wide prototype Spider.
The Spider is probably one of the more wild motion cars ever done. And,
I wouldn't argue with that.
You're looking at the prototype car. This was built as a cafe racer to race on the Can-Am circuit, and this car was set up again with the suspension so that it had a great feel of going around corners and things like that.
It's so wide, though. I mean, it's almost insanely wide.
It is insanely wide, as a matter of fact. And again, this became the car that a number of Spider cars were produced from. The Spider cars all had kind of a trademark yellow color, and usually had a Spider painted on the hood, actually.
But this was the prototype.
This is the prototype car. And this is actually numbered 0001, so it must have meant that Joel was planning to build a bunch of these things.
He thinks big. This interior is almost a living room. I mean, it's pretty, I mean, the diamond pleat and everything, or the buttons.
Yeah, Joel liked to give everything his little flair, and the diamond pleat interior was one of his flares.
Even the door panels.
The door panels. I mean, he put his own trademark things on everything, and made them different and unique than some of the other supercars that were built, like the Yankos and Nickeys and Burgers and things like that.
Louvered rear window.
Yeah, you got a drop-down rear window and then the louvers to keep the driver cool.
Oh, wow.
And of course, then the neatest part of this car, I think, is the rear end of this, where he added the the third tail light.
And again, look at the tires under that thing. I mean, the flares are there for real. They're to accommodate those massive tires.
Absolutely.
I mean, how is this on the road?
It's fun to drive. In fact, I had it out yesterday, and I had people just kind of falling out and stopping and going off the road as we went by. And it handles like a dream. It really, really does.
With all that power, and another 500, how many? 535?
530 horsepower, I believe.
Now this is a very special Motion car, isn't it?
This one's very special, Dennis. This one is the car that actually sat on the showroom floor when Motion Performance was shut down by the federal government. And as that story goes, as the gas crisis hit in '73, the federal government clamped down on emissions restrictions and things such as that, and they started to give Joel a hard time as to what he was doing to his cars up there. But this car was made up of what he said was leftover parts. This is a '74 Corvette, and the neatest part of this car is it's all in the engine.
Well, it says L88. Is that the truth?
Yeah, it is one of the original L88s that he had shipped to him that he said he still had laying around at the end. And he stuffed it in this, and after his Motion makeover with cam and intake and ignition and everything that Joel did to the engines, this car makes somewhere close to 600 horsepower.
Man, I mean, and is it incredibly fast?
Oh, it's amazing to drive. This car has a lot of top end to it too, so when you get it out on there and you punch it and you're really, really flying, you just lay back in the seat. And this thing will go somewhere 180 to 190 miles an hour. I have not driven it that fast personally just yet.
Well, these Corvettes are killer, but everybody knows pretty much that Motion's bread and butter were the Camaros. You got a nice Gen 2 there.
Yeah, Dennis, let me show you.
Yeah, I want to see it. Welcome back to My Classic Car and Dan McMichael's Baldwin Motion Supercars. Oh, boy, Dan, this is beautiful, and what a shocking paint job.
Yeah, this is a color called Flame Orange, and I've never ever seen a color quite like this on any car.
It pops, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and I just love the black accent stripes.
I got kind of a Halloween thing going here. I mean, this thing looks serious. Now, these Gen 2s were really great cars, and this is, you know, pretty much what he made his money on.
Well, yeah, and again, you look at all the different things that he did to the car. This car started off particularly as a white Z28, and he added the Rally Sport package to it. He added the paint to it, of course, the Kriegers and the Hooker side pipes, and just really, really brought this car to life.
Well, that's great. Now, this is a Type LT, which is kind of unique for his cars. He started with, you know, more base cars usually, didn't he?
Joel didn't always spend a lot of money on the chassis because he knew he was going to rework them so much. So this, I believe, is the only Type LT Camaro that was ever produced. And of course, you got the nicer interior than the bucket seats, the touring bucket seats.
Well, it is a great looking interior. I mean, it looks downright comfy.
You know, it is. It's great to drive. And you got the Hearst shifter, and of course the sun gauges and the rosewood wheel. Just the best of the best for this particular style of car.
Now, even with that Hearst shifter, it sure looks like a 4-speed.
Well, no, you know, Dennis, it's not. This is actually an automatic. This is a turbo 400 with a manual valve body. So in other words, this thing is definitely set up to race. This thing actually drops and grabs rather than scooting across or hopping, and it just really drops the rear end and it grabs and goes. So this is definitely a quarter-mile warrior.
Well, he was known for the suspension on these things, and they really did bite. They just gripped the road. Was it a high mileage car?
No, actually, this car only has 5,200 original miles on it.
But that's over 20,000 times down a quarter-mile track.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
But it does. The spoiler looks higher. It looks like that was extended.
That was extended up a couple of inches. So I always thought that gave a really, really neat appeal to the rear end of this car.
The whole thing just looks so aggressive, and you know. But what makes it as aggressive as it is, and we've talked about so many Motion cars. I got to see one of these engines.
Okay, let's take a look.
So this was a full-blown Phase 3 treatment on this car?
Phase 3 treatment. One of the things I love is the L88 hood on this thing. I think it always gives a Camaro, an attitude all its own. And Dennis, you'll notice that this is a LS6, and of course it has the Motion cam in it. You've got the Edelbrock high-rise on it, aluminum high-rise.
Nice valve covers there, the Motion chrome valve covers.
Motion emblem valve covers. And
big massive radiator on these. I mean, these things were just built to just flat out fly.
Yeah, and that was the whole Motion mystique, is that he built the cars and they came with a guarantee that they would run in the 11 seconds in the quarter mile with a 120-mile top end.
So most people are pretty happy with the performance.
Absolutely. In fact, you know, they are just the best of all the muscle cars that were ever produced. You just couldn't find anything better.
Sounds like you're happy with the performance too.
Oh, I love this car.
Well, this one's licensed and insured, right?
Let's go drive it.
Yes. Welcome back to My Classic Car. One of the differences with the Motion cars is that these were really all checked out.
Well, yeah, that was the thing, is Joel balanced and blueprinted and built the engines. So, and then before they ever left the shop, they were all dynoed, and Bill Mitchell used to run the dyno for Joel. That's a name you'll probably remember too.
You're kidding me.
He had quite the team there. I think the fun thing about Joel is that in a lot of respects he really didn't know what he was doing. He just was doing what he loved, which was building race cars, and a lot of the stuff he built he took out and raced. It was proven on the strip. In a lot of other respects, especially like in the early days, he used to race on Saturday and sell on Monday and go to build another one.
And that's kind of what it was in those days. That was pretty, I mean, it's effortless, isn't it?
It is. I've never driven a car like this that handles so smoothly, and believe me, I've had my hands on some Camaros that'll spin around on you in a heartbeat, and this one just wants to drop and go in a straight line, which is great.
So he was a racer kind of turned businessman. I mean,
Right.
the racetrack was his R&D area.
That's exactly right. He knew how to tune a car, and again, that was another thing that he said, is a lot of people knew how to drop an engine and a big carburetor and, you know, transmission and rear end and everything, but to get them to all work together and tune them right, just right, so that you actually had the package, was his claim to fame.
Oh, wow.
What'd you think of that?
That is serious, man.
Nothing like a little afternoon drive in a big block.
That is very serious. This is so cool. You got such great stuff here.
Oh, well, thank you
These
very
Motion
much.
cars are awesome. I mean, you got anything else?
Well, you know, as a matter of fact, Dennis, there is something I haven't shown you yet.
What would that be?
Motion Mako Shark.
Going in for restoration, is it?
Yeah,